Welcome to the Unfiltered Chat with Leon de Preez. I'm sorry, my Mac might be acting up sometimes, but Leon, how you doing, bud? Welcome.
Hey, good on you. Good on you. Glad to be on.
It's been a while since we've had you on, Leon. How's life going? What's news?
Yeah, no, it's going good. We have, as I said, that I think I told you just before the show that my wife was driving, and this is for people that want to listen to this. My wife was driving on the car and alone, and when you get out of our state, they kind of like pull people over. So they pulled her over. Nothing wrong with her car. She reached for her handbag to get a license. They saw money in the handbag. They said, "How much do you have?" She said, "No, I've got." She said she had 10,000. They said, "No, it's illegal. You cannot carry 10,000." My wife being alone. Then the cop already put his whole body into the car through the window. You know how obtrusive they can get, and and said, no, he needs that money. And so she said, "Look, must I give you money so that you don't, because I can't have this money?" So they said, no, we just sort it out here. So obviously being very impulsive, and so they being impulsive, she gave them 200 or 300 rand, but she didn't give it. They kind of like demanded it. She was scared. She gave it to them. There was a lot of cops there. It was a whole block thing where they pulled people over. And then she obviously called me afterwards. I was upset. I'm like, "Why don't you phone me and I'll sort them out?" I went there with a phone, with a live stream. I put my live stream on. I drove there on Facebook. And it went viral. I think it's on 150,000 views already. So we climbed out. I'm not there to fight the cops. I know you don't go with that behavior. I'm very friendly with them, but I just wanted to know what was going on. So they said there were other cops there that did it, and they already left. They recognized me. And then usually when they recognized me, they kind of like back down a little bit. Then they saw I was recording them secretly from the car, and they got more scared. But I ended up praying for them, and some other cops came to me and said they don't believe in God, or they don't believe in the church and so on. And they're upset because the church just steals money. So I just asked if I could pray for them, prayed for them. The one guy started crying. And but yeah, I just said to them, how do you rob? So we don't have a lot of people say we have a mafia as a government. I don't think we have a mafia, because the mafia at least protects their people. I think we have a cartel, where they just take. I mean, a mafia, you can still pay homage. They offer you protection. And we don't get protection, unless if that was the homage. I'm not sure. But I was just thinking, how ridiculous is it? You don't know if you can be pulled over by cops or not. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, that's where we are at, despite being very busy. And then, just on another topic, you can maybe touch on as well. I just came back from Zim, and you would think Zimbabwe is doing bad. So when you land there, the atmosphere is clean. There's no racism. There's not an ounce of racism. People are humble. People are working hard. Black and white together. The attitude amongst the people is spectacular. I don't know how to explain it. It's like you're going into a different world. They remove most regulations to do business easy. You can just do business. I mean, we're going to do one or two things there, and there's no red tape, no regulations. I've got some contacts in there, but it's just sad to see that Zimbabwe is doing better than South Africa.
Well, that is the problem. It's not a problem. I mean, God bless Zimbabwe after what they've gone through. However, the problem is that South Africa has got this clear map that shows them what will happen if they continue to implement these policies that Zimbabwe has already tried and failed. It's the same with, what was that Australian system that we implemented here for education? Can't remember what it was called. Somebody in the chat can maybe tell me, but the Australian government implemented this type of education and it didn't work there. But then South Africa said, no, we're going to implement the same system here in South Africa and it will work. And then within 5 years it collapsed and they had to default back to their previous system. And it's the same with land grabs. Like, so land grabs and then expropriation without compensation. Because a lot of people forget that before Robert Mugabe, started with expropriation without compensation, it was land grabs. It's exactly the same thing that is happening in South Africa. And there's a brilliant documentary about it called Stolen Ground from Joe Emilio that people can watch on YouTube, called Stolen Ground. And it's about the Tygerberg Raceway course. and how in the Western Cape they managed to do that, where they just completely went and land grabbed, and the police and nobody could do anything. And then just building on your story, it's very sad. I mean, we I remember 5, 6 years ago, it was big for people to dress up as police officers and then steal money and steal cars. Now it's just the police doing it. It's like, here we go. Like we're not going to only dress up as police officers, we'll be police officers. It's just, it's so sad to see that we can see what is coming, and yet our government is not thinking about it, but they reinforcing and doubling down on these policies that will cause us to be exactly what
Yes.
happened to Zimbabwe. Now, what you're saying, it's great, Zimbabwe is on the mend, but why do we have to go through this total destruction and inflation through the roof and so much unemployment to eventually just end up behind Zimbabwe again? Doesn't make sense.
I was with Dawie Root on this afternoon. So, he said
Mm,
something very peculiar. He said that an economy, it is normal for an economy to grow. It is, he said, the normal rhythm is for an economy to grow. Even if you do nothing, it will grow. It's the
mhm,
automatic way that it leans towards. And he says for an economy not to grow means that somebody is doing something intentionally for it not to grow, and that's obviously the
mm,
ANC. I have made it peace. I even said it to our church that we do have terrorists that's governing us. That's a fact. Whether now you don't even know anymore. Can we speak against the government or not? Because in one vein they say that you're not allowed to speak against the government, which is obviously clear communism. But as far as I know, we are still a democracy. But there's this unspoken rule or the silence where you must be afraid to speak against the government. And
mm,
but I said to our church, I said, look, we are serving terrorists. This is not a black or white thing. It is a pure terrorist regime. I know we're gonna get into the 400 million US dollar lawsuit that they are doing now against the ANC, because apparently they were aware of the genocide that is going to happen before 7th of October. So it's
mm.
like they were instigators in it. Not exactly sure, but I saw that they're preparing the lawsuit. Not sure if it is going to Cyril only, or if it's going to go to him only, he's gone, But
Mm.
or if it is going to go to the country, which is going to add a whole lot of extra debt onto the country. So we have these people that are intentionally trying to really destroy the country. And we just had that whole conversation with Dawie Rudd. He said, if there is a motion of no confidence, but if they're going to vote and they can possibly, it's a strong possibility for them to remove him. But then who's going to take over? Fikile or Gwede, or, that's the options.
Yeah, Paul
It's just
Mashatile, I mean,
ridiculous.
so the options isn't really great. And you know what? The thing is, the ANC of 1994 is definitely not the same ANC of today. It's exactly like old money. Like when your father or your grandfather used to work hard for the money. And then the next child comes in, perhaps he makes a success or she makes a success of it.
Mm.
But then the grandchildren, eventually, I think that they talk about in the rules of three, it's the father and then the son and then the grandchildren. And eventually it gets wiped out down the line because you don't instill the same beliefs and the same principles. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what's happening here. You can compare the ANC of 2025 to that of a grandchild of somebody that was very wealthy that didn't earn anything and is now still like riding on the name of the grandfather, but spending and making decisions that's not really economically
Yes.
viable for South Africa. And that can just be amplified. There is no leadership in the ANC, and there is currently no real opposition in South Africa. And it's
Yes.
amazing that we've managed to stay afloat, knowing that our opposition is MK and the EFF. Those are the people that are supposedly the opposition against the ANC. How scary and petrifying is that?
Yeah. Look, I wanted to ask you, what is your assessment? Do you think they're going to remove him?
I think that, look, I did a thing the other night during a live stream. You need some people in the ANC you to vote. Okay, so the options are you need the DA, the EFF, MK, and then the IFP. And then I believe through those four parties, you don't need any other support.
Yes.
However, what can happen is, let's say you've got some people in the ANC. What they'll probably do is they'll have a vote by secret ballot, meaning people don't have to out themselves in the ANC that vote against. But we know there are factionalism in the ANC at the moment. So
Yes.
all you really need is the ANC, the DA, and then the EFF or MK, one of those, and then it can happen. Now, whether that will take place, I think every day the cries are getting louder and louder, especially if you consider that in what July has got how many days? Jan, Feb, March, April, May,
31
June,
not?
31 days.
No.
So in 10 days from now, if the tariffs hit South Africa from the United States and we get 30% or potentially 40% because we are part of the BRICS nations, then I think there's going to be a very, very swift move to get rid of Cyril Ramaphosa, because he's had pretty much 2 to 3 months to get this right, and he still stands behind Gwede Mantashe, who is his, no, sorry, not Gwede Mantashe, who is his special envoy, Mcebisi Jonas. Sorry, Mcebisi Jonas is a special envoy, but he can't get a he can't get a visa to go to the United States to go and discuss things there, because he labeled President Donald Trump as a racist, a bigot, a homophobe, and all of these things. So and Cyril has been fully aware of that for about half. And the fact that this is continuing tells me that I'm not too sure what is happening. But I think that if the tariffs increase, it's a definite, without a doubt. If it doesn't, and miraculously somehow we get a deal before then I think you'll be able to breathe for another month or two before the next crisis hits. What's your take? Do you think it's going to happen?
I said, I think the one time I think I showed you some prophecies I did, like national prophecies, where, we prophesied COVID. I think I shared it with you on the first broadcast. And we prophesied the lockdown, COVID, a year before it happened. I went to Parliament, spoke to people there, and I said the month it will happen, and that's simply because of a vision that I had, and then many other things. I also prophesied, I said 2 flags will become one, and people need to pray that 2 flags don't become one. What I was seeing was the GNU, but I didn't know it was a GNU, but it was also a year beforehand. And then end of last year, and usually I release prophecies to our church on New Year's Eve for what I see for the next year, and I said last year these words. I said, in fact, my team has put it together now today, we're going to release it tomorrow. So I said that Cyril is going to cry many tears here, and I said it over and over and over. And then I said that there is a possible removal that is going to come, but I said it very vaguely because I wasn't 100% sure. I can't say this is what God said to me, but it was so strong in my heart or in my spirit that they're going to remove him, and then now obviously I'm seeing everything working up to what it is. I think it's going to look very bad for the ANC if they remove him, because didn't they also change Mbeki with Zuma? Wasn't there like a short, they kind of like let him go short and then put Zuma in? Somebody told me today, I don't know if it was Davy. And then obviously we know that Zuma was removed and Cyril was put in. So if Cyril is removed, it's going to look very bad for the ANC, which is a good thing.
Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, the ANC is above redemption. I don't think the ANC can save itself with what's currently going on in this country. And just to give people a rundown that might not be too familiar with the statistics, the broader definition of unemployment, we're at 45%. Youth unemployment is at, I think it's 62%. There's a violent, there's a murder, 84 murders a day, and then a violent sexual crime being committed every few seconds in South Africa. And then that's not even talking about corruption. We are just talking about people being instantly impacted by decisions that the government isn't making correctly. Then added to that, we currently have 65 million people in this country, and there's only 170,000 police officers. Now you can already slash half of that amount. Well, you can slash that amount in half because they work on shifts. And then you can remove about 40,000 people because they're admin. They don't actually go on the streets and patrol. So what does that leave you with? It leaves you with about 40,000 police officers at any given point in time that's out on the streets patrolling. And that is why this country is so violent, and that is why corruption is also so rampant, is because people, the people that's in charge of this country isn't taking it seriously. Cyril Ramaphosa has time and time again said that he will not be the president that divides the ANC.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you go and look at his social media profile, he says in his description, I'm the president of the ANC. And then secondly, it says, I'm the
President of the
president
country.
of South Africa. Who does that? Like, show me another president that puts his political party verbatim in front of being the president of the country. I mean, Donald Trump is first and foremost the president of the United States.
Yes.
And then he was the the nomination for the Republican Party.
Yeah, look, I don't know. I'm preparing. I spoke to David to get encouragement. There wasn't much that he could give, but
Yeah.
I'm just telling our people, just hold on. I think it has to get worse before it's going to get better. I'm not, when you speak to Zimbabwe about race laws, they're completely confused. They don't understand that we have race laws in the country. And obviously we know there wasn't oppression in Zimbabwe before Mugabe. There wasn't apartheid or anything like that. I never knew it. I was just told that recently. But that's obviously why there's not race laws in. I think they're going to change the BEE terminology. I saw something like that. Somebody also told me to appease the international community, but not change anything about it. But I think that, my big concern is just the rand. So I asked Davi, wrote about the rand, because right now the rand is leaking 11% a year, meaning we're losing 11% a year per annum. That means if you buy property, you're still losing. If you're investing in the S&P 500, you are losing. You have to invest at 20% to make a bit of money. So, my advice to people with large amounts of money is to move it out of the country, put it in another currency, and invest it out of the country. So if you put in something like Swiss franc and you invest it, you have, and this is not financial advice for those who want to know, although I do have an FSP license, but you can invest in Swiss franc and you have 0% inflation and 0% devaluation, which literally means you make already 10% more than the rand just by sitting there without investing. Now, if you invest at a good 20% investment, you are making 30% more than the rand every year. So I took my life savings that I have, my portfolio, and I said, okay, if I sell up and I invest into the stock market in South Africa, or I keep it in the nation, I do that, or I send it out of the country and I invest it somewhere else. I asked on ChatGPT, and it said that I will make 150% more monies outside of the country than what I would in the country. And I mean, it gave me an exclamation mark sentence. It's like, sell everything and move it out of the country. That's what ChatGPT said. It's like, because what you do is, you put your whole portfolio in. So I say, I have this property with this. I have this property with this. It brings in this monies. I mean, it just said, sell everything. Sell your house, sell everything and get out. That was ChatGPT's advice. So
that's not even Grok. That's ChatGPT. Grok would have said something worse,
So that's my advice to people that have monies or that have businesses. You get poorer in the nation. I think they said for the last 6 years, South Africans are literally 50% poorer than 50% poorer than what they were. It is impossible to get rich in this nation. Yeah. Sorry.
And the thing is, the middle class and the upper class, they don't feel it as much, but they are usually more financial savvy. And a practical example of this is, if let's say you've got a retirement annuity that pays out at 55 or 60 or 65. It might look good on paper what the estimates are. Like, let's say, use a random number, 5 million rand, that pays out at 65. The problem is that, now, let's say you've got 20 years before you reach 65. If you buy a property now, let's say for 1.5 million rand, and in 20 years' time, what will this property be worth if you had to buy it? It would probably, arguably, be more than 5 million rand based on inflation and based on how the rand is losing its value. So, don't get too excited when you now look into the future and see how much millions you'll have, because being a millionaire in South Africa doesn't mean what it used to mean.
Of course.
That's why they talk about dollar millionaires,
Millionaires, yep.
because that is the standard. Middle class individuals can easily become millionaires, but in Zimbabwe we had billionaires and they couldn't buy bread. So yeah. Anyway, I wanted to delve a little bit into something that is actually blowing my mind, and that is, a former minister of various ministries, and then also somebody that recently joined the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Naledi Pandor. Now, a lot of you will know her from standing behind Palestine, defending Palestine, talking to the leaders of Hamas over a phone call last year, or I think, no, sorry, in 2023, 10 days after Israel was invaded, and where 1,400 people lost their lives. She phoned Hamas 10 days after that attack, did not once condemn them for the killing of 1,400 people. Instead, she phoned to offer her condolences to Israel's response against Hamas. And it goes further than that. It goes, you just need to look at the people that Naledi Pandor associates herself with, and then you'll see it's Iran. It's all like Muslim countries, but it goes further than that. It goes to the extremist realm. It goes to Hezbollah. It goes to Hamas. Now, she recently joined she's the chairperson of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. And I made a video today in which, if you go onto the Nelson Mandela Foundation's website, there's a thing where I think it's called Solidarity. And what they are in essence doing is they are wanting to fight Christian Zionism. Christian, or I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it's Christian Zionism.
Yes.
And they're willing to pay people 150,000 rand, or up to 150,000 rand, if they send their business plan or their proposal as how they will fight the narrative or fight the idea of Christian Zionism. And I would like to get your take on this, because this to me is a very clear attack on Christianity and Judaism. A very, very clear attack, because you can't separate the Bible with the will of God. And it is quite clear that specifically Zionism, I believe it's based on the king, is it King David, or who was it? That the commitment was made to, the promised land. And in essence, what Naledi Pandor here is saying is that narrative, that core belief, should be attacked because it doesn't favor her worldview. And what is atrocious here is that the Nelson Mandela Foundation has been dragged into fighting her battles for her. I would like to get your take on this.
Yeah, look, I'm reading the comments here on the Lady Pandor. It's funny, but
well, I can just say hong 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 hong.
Yeah, look, I think people need to understand there are two religions in the world, and that's it. It's Islam and it's Christianity. I understand there's Hinduism, but you can't really put them in because they serve how many gods. Everything goes there. They can even serve Jesus with those gods. So there's two religions in the world. It's Islam and it's Christianity. We see the intention of Islam is to have as many children and put them in and put their people into top positions, which is very strategic and very good. So we see they've done it with Europe. We see they've done it with the UK. We see now the UK Muslim, I can't remember the guy's name here, with our guy in Cape Town. I'm like, what is happening there? And then you see Trump releasing the Eswatini, those criminals into Eswatini. They're all Muslims. And we know where they're going to end up. So, and you see the subtlety of the nation swinging towards Islam. And that is because of the alignment that they have, which is anti-Christian. If you look in Russia, Putin isn't necessarily anti-Christian, but he's very large gatherings because he's a communist, he's a dictator. I wish we had Putin, but we need Putin, but he's against it. You see Iran, you see, so they will be against Christianity because Christianity speaks of everything. Let's leave Christ out, let's leave God out, but it speaks of freedom, it speaks of capitalism. The Bible is full of capitalism, not socialism. Socialism is demonic to its core. It's masked, it's communism masked with socialism. So, that's the fight that there is, and it's coming to South Africa. So South Africa is lining up with a satanic agenda, and these things are spiritual. We're sitting with a government that is ancestral worship, hates Christians, doesn't give no regard to the church. You look at Trump. Trump has every week great ministers, many of them I know, laying hands and praying for him. He literally receives prophecies as the president from correct ministers. And people can do and say what they want and mock Christianity and do what... the man... there's a part in his heart where he does fear God. There's a part in his heart where he respects the Christian community. And whether people believe in Israel or not, also whether they believe in the intention of Benjamin Netanyahu, which I'm not fully standing for, because there is a little bit of a talk there, but in Donald Trump's heart, he sees Israel as a friend, which the Bible does instruct the Christian community to a degree to do. We don't have to worship them. Some do worship them. I don't believe in that. But when people are against Israel, they are against Christianity. And that is the notion in the nation. So it is a very subtle... It is a very subtle agenda, and it is to topple. It'll eventually topple Christianity. And the thing is, you get here to a point with conscience. People ask, okay, but how do I know God exists and all these things? You have to look at a person's conscience. And what is conscience? I saw a podcast between Gareth Cliff and Heinz Winkler, where right at the end, Gareth asked Cliff, why he doesn't believe in God, and he believes in the principles, and he spoke about conscience, and I'm not sure if Heinz was answering him correctly, but that's one of my topics, kind of like that I really go deep in. The conscience cannot be explained, and the conscience is really a moral compass that gives clear indication that the moment a person becomes a Christian, their conscience is washed by the blood, and they begin to think correctly. Otherwise, your conscience is filled with ideologies, it's filled with just things. So some people have a moral compass, others not. What do you call it? People that are antisocial or psychotic don't have a moral compass. They don't have a conscience. We see this in narcissism as well. So you can see that the government doesn't have a conscience because there's no God. They've got other ideologies. It's demonic. When God does not exist, or at least there's no Christian principles or values, the moral compass goes completely left. You see that in the woke generation in the US. So I believe that is where we are going. I think that if the ANC isn't ruled out soon, I believe they're going to be, actually. I have a little bit of hope, but that, we're going to see an influx of Islam, and you're going to see, it's in the UK where they said they can marry 9-year-olds now, isn't it? I saw that.
I'm not
or they're
sure.
pushing
I haven't
for
checked
it.
the news. They're probably pushing for it, because I know that in Palestine, I think the age is 12, but they overlook that all the time. And in Iran as well, I believe it's 10, and they overlook it, where you can marry, literally, an old man can marry a girl that's 10 to 12 years old. I mean, that's just sickening.
Yes. So with the Naledi Pandor thing, in 2024, she released an article that said Christians who stand for Israel will be arrested. What the heck, you know? So I see somebody with a very low IQ. I see somebody that can barely talk, looks like somebody hit them in the face very hard and never recovered. You know, I don't want to get ugly on here, but I mean, common sense is common sense. And I don't know how somebody can put that individual into a position of power. That is what goes beyond me. I'm like, I don't understand. I don't understand how you can put Gwede Mantesha, Paul Mateshile, or let's leave Paul out. I think he's the best out of the three in terms of ability, maybe. But if you have to look at Gwede or Fikile, I mean, dear Lord, what's happening, you know? And people would put them into power.
Worse and worse.
So it feels to me like everything's intentional. I feel that we have the most racist president. And whenever he talks, he says stuff that we are colonizers. And then he says this, he says BEE has not done its work yet. We have to tighten it, meaning that we have to punish them more. You know, we haven't seen them being punished enough. So there is a clear agenda in his, you know, it's a program, it's an agenda. They have to make the frogs boil.
Added to that, of course, is the fact that Cyril Ramaphosa also is continuously talking about, you know, they're not talking about the future as much as what they constantly are talking about the past. And there was something recently that Cyril Ramaphosa was talking about. I mean, look, their broad-based Black economic empowerment policy that they want to implement even more is the fact that if you employ, so in the past, broad-based Black economic empowerment affected people that wanted to do business with the government. Now, broad-based Black economic empowerment is going to affect everybody.
Everything.
If you own a business and you employ more than 50 people, then if you, over the next 5 years, don't comply, then they can fine you 10% of your turnover. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
10% of your turnover, just because you, who started a business and happen to be white, do not want to give shares of your company or sell shares of your company to somebody that's previously disadvantaged or allegedly previously disadvantaged. Because we also talk about how broad-based Black economic empowerment has only enriched a handful of people and have kept the majority of people poor in South Africa.
You know, I wanted to say this. Listen, I got over 1,000 people on our side, families and so on watching. I want you guys to please go subscribe to Renaldo's channel. We'll put the link in the comments, David, if you can do that. Great political. It's good to get truth. The News 24 won't give you truth. Okay, so he's one of the channels you guys can follow to get truth. But you know, the article or the whole one, I believe, also of Nelson Mandela, and the one where Naledi Pandor said she's going to arrest Christians, is very politically motivated. It's what they're trying to do. They compare Israel versus Palestine and say that that's apartheid. You know, so it's an ideology that goes forth, which is a total lie. We know that they changed history, and I don't think we can ever fix that. I don't know how to fix it. We got the critical race theory coming in. We need a dictator, a friendly dictator, at the least a friendly and a godly dictator. Don't have to be born again Christian, but have Christian values, but they can be dictators. I don't care if the government steals money. Just give people opportunities. You know, they've removed all opportunity from people, and that's not only white, that's white and black. No black, low income or in townships, those in poverty is going to come up under these laws. So we're going to have a very interesting election. You know, BEE is not going to be relaxed under the ANC. I doubt it. Highly doubt it. That's how they eat. But you know, another thing I wanted to ask you is, what is your thoughts on the lawsuit that the ANC knew about the ICJ case beforehand?
I saw some articles with regards to that, and I wanted to do a deep dive in this week to release a video next week. So I'm not sure if it has been confirmed yet. I know that there were, from what I saw on social media, the articles that came out were not really from verified sources. So I mean, if things have changed, then I'll do a deep dive and make content. But look, I mean, obviously, if it's true, then I think the problem is that it should be far-reaching, and it should target specific individuals in government. I don't think that the country can be blamed. It should be the government, the people that's in charge, the people that at that point in time, which was the ANC, it was October 7th,
Mm.
2023. So if they knew a month or two before, then that is squarely with the ANC, and then the president and his executive needs to be held accountable for that. I know that that is still when Naledi Pandor was still also a minister. So, everything is lining up with regards to that. And yeah, if you look at the relationship that the ANC has had with dictators and with terrorists, it goes back quite far. I mean, if you look at who funded the ANC, you'll find that Iran is involved, and terrorist organizations are involved. Let's not forget for 1 second, though, and I mean this might be an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people, but Nelson Mandela was a terrorist.
Terrorist.
Now,
Hmm.
the definition of what a terrorist is, we can argue that, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Mm.
I'm not talking about, look, Nelson Mandela, after he came out of prison, I think that he was somebody that tried to unite the nation. I think that he realized that, wanting to live the life that he did before he went to prison is not going to be sustainable. And South Africa does owe a debt to Nelson Mandela, because he could have come out in 94 and said, let's kill as
Of
many white
course.
people as, and the rest of the world would not have been able to do anything about that. But
Mm.
instead of doing that, he said, let's build together.
Mm.
And so the point that I'm making is, Mkhonto Wesizwe was started by Nelson Mandela. And if you look at the acts that Mkhonto Wesizwe committed, it was terrorist acts. Of course, it was against the apartheid government, but tell that to the people who lost their lives.
Yes.
Innocent people that were walking around in Church Street or in a shopping mall, and then suddenly you've lost your family, or you've lost some of your family members. So ultimately, what it boils down to is, why is the ANC so cozy with terrorist organizations, and why are they so hell bent on supporting these initiatives? The big thing for me is, if you look at what happened on October 7th, it's quite clear that 1,400 people needlessly lost their lives
Mm.
because Hamas invaded Israel and attacked the people. But you don't see the South African government acknowledge that the October 7th incident happened. You don't even have Naledi Pandor that condemned the actions of Hamas. Instead, you get making a phone call to the leader of Hamas and asking if they can provide aid to Palestine and Hamas. That is how insane the ANC's association with terrorist organizations go. And then, of course, Donald Trump also spoke about Iran and South Africa's cozy relationship with
Mhm.
Hezbollah. I mean, it's mind blowing. And if I can get into it quick, because you said they're blurring the lines, and they're trying to, associate what's happening in Israel with Christians. Well, let
Mm.
me let me tell you what it says here. So, in a nutshell, what they're saying is, they're saying, amid unrelenting and punitive violence in Palestine, Christian Zionism, and then they explain it, a theology that conflates biblical prophecy with political support for Israel's settler colonialism, remains a driving force in legitimizing occupation. So they still believe that Israel is Jewish people are occupying Israel
Israel
in
still.
a place that should be called Palestine. But they're saying they're legitimizing occupation, apartheid, and genocide. Deeply rooted in colonial history and amplified by global networks, this ideology has been a barrier to achieving peace and justice for Palestinians. Okay. The misuse of religious scripture to justify domination and discrimination is something we all know too well in South Africa. Quick question, to my Hamas friends. If somebody decides to, show a little bit of leg and they happen to be a female, what would happen to them in Palestine? I'm just asking. Sorry, that was me. That's not part of the text. But I mean, yeah, you want to talk about peace and justice, but what about, women rights in Hamas and in Hezbollah? There is none. But anyway, okay, so the last thing that I wanted to just focus on here is how they conclude this. They say, In the South African context, Christian scriptures were similarly misinterpreted and weaponized to reinforce the apartheid regime and justify its crimes against humanity. So this is where they're trying to, bring Christianity into the fold and saying that, ooh, it's a weapon for bad. But yeah, they literally saying the Nelson Mandela Foundation invites individuals, organizations, networks, and institutions to submit proposals for impactful initiatives geared towards challenging Christian Zionism with the aim of advancing Palestinian justice and liberation. We see creative, courageous, and effective initiatives to achieve this end. And then they're willing to pay up to 150,000 Rand. And they don't say there's a budget, but it's 150,000 Rand per initiative, and there can be 100 or potentially 1,000 initiatives because we don't know what the budget is. But I mean, how scary and shocking is that?
That they're paying people to fight Christianity.
Yes. That's exactly that. And not only Christianity, but also Judaism.
Yes.
So it's more than just one religion.
Yeah, look, for me, again, I see it like, obviously, you must understand, many people see, especially if they're secular, they see Christianity and Judaism kind of like together. They always throw the church and Israel into the same mix. Some churches don't believe that Israel has a special place. Some do believe they do have. That's neither here nor there. The understanding and the ideology in South Africa is that if they know that Christians stand with Israel, and they want to come against it. But again, I just see, when you look at the infiltration of China, when you look at Muslims coming in, there's a clear agenda. We have a physical and natural agenda, and there's a spiritual agenda. But I think it goes deeper. There's definitely, obviously, if you look at Cyril, he's got business interests in Iran. He has, I think MTN is there.
MTN.
Yeah. So he's protecting his businesses. And there's much more. I mean, these guys getting back-end deals all the time to do certain things, and they're selling the country out. So they are just looking after themselves. I think, I don't even know if it is true. I couldn't believe this was true. But they said that 41 quadrillion Rand is stolen, and it seems literally impossible. And they said that can settle global debt. And I was like, imagine where South Africa could have been, if it was governed correctly. So these guys are pushing race theory, race tactics. The church is look, we are one country. Now there are many countries that the church isn't celebrated, but look at the status or the state of a nation where a church and if you can say Judaism, or principles are not celebrated. Look at the state of that nation. That should already be common sense. You won't see one nation flourish where they don't, and I'm speaking in a way of freedom. I'm not speaking that China's flourishing. China is not free. I'm speaking about democracy in a good way and freedom. The moment they overlook the church, the moment they overlook Christianity, whether people believe in God or not, the principles work. So that is what's happening in South Africa. The church has never been celebrated since the installment of ANC. Now, when it comes to Nelson Mandela, he was a terrorist. But I want to say this, some people on here might not believe it or so, but my friend's father, his name is Ray Macaulay, he personally, privately led him to the Lord. After he was out of prison, he was already in power. He was very close to Nelson Mandela, and he once made a mistake. He said it publicly at the church, and Nelson Mandela really took him on, and he said, look, that's a private thing that happened, and there's a lot of things at stake. But he told me, and my friend, very close friend of mine, we're best friends, his dad was basically part of bringing apartheid down. One of the first churches that did it, whether people like Rhema Church or not, that's neither here nor there. But he told me all the intimate moments and how Nelson Mandela's heart changed at the end, and he genuinely wanted freedom at the end. And I think for that, South Africa can owe him. But we do know the man was a terrorist, but not that. You look at his wife. What sick human being must you be to put a tire around someone's neck, fill it with fuel, petrol, set it alight, and stand and watch And that's what's happening, with xenophobia.
Mm.
You cannot be human
Yeah.
and do that.
Nobody seems to ask how Stompy is doing, and there's no memorials for Stompy. The that is directly linked to Winnie Mandela and
Yes.
necklacing. And I mean, a lot of people forget that the IFP, the Inkatha Freedom Party, and the ANC were violently clashing against one another right before, pretty much, during the phase of getting to our first democratic election. And what is really unfortunate is that the ANC has managed to write that out of the history books and make it seem like it was a peaceful transition. If you look at black on black violence during that phase, I'm not trying to talk positively about apartheid, but less people were murdered during the entire apartheid process than the people that died during that black on black violence between the Inkatha Freedom Party and the ANC. Why does nobody talk about that? Why can we not have honest conversations with one another? I believe that the reason that South Africa is in the mess it's in right now is because we don't have honest conversations with one another. I believe the last time South Africa seriously had an honest conversation was during what was it, the 94, when we had, oh my word, now my brain has escaped me. The negotiation or the discussions, where people would come before the commission and tell them,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what was it? It was
And
the
that
Truth and Reconciliation Commission,
yes, yeah, reconciliation.
TRC. And if you, sorry, I'm just getting comfortable here. If you look at the fact that if you in South Africa talk about the fact that one settler, one bullet, kill the boer, kill the farmer, and all of these statements, what people tend to forget is that the Zulus and the Xhosas all also migrated from Central Africa or just, north of South Africa into South Africa. But we're not allowed to speak about, Shaka Zulu that killed hundreds of thousands of Xhosas during the Mfukane, I believe is what it's called. You're not allowed to speak about that. But everybody can forever speak about colonization and the
Yeah.
bad things that white people brought to Africa. But you're not allowed to talk about Mfukane, where Zulu people killed Xhosas like it was going out of fashion. And then also Shaka Zulu killing his own when people fell pregnant and he was mourning, his mother's death. And then he killed pregnant women. Nobody's allowed to speak about these things because if you do, then you are allegedly a racist. Because the only thing that you can speak of in South Africa is negatively about white people. And that is fine. And you can
And it's
sing
not only,
songs
look, it's
glorifying the
not
killing of
only,
white people.
it's not only South Africa. If it wasn't for Trump, same in America. I mean, this is a global agenda. And I'm not sure if it's run by globalists, but it's a global agenda to do a white cleansing, if I can say it like that, or a, what do you call it, like an ethnic cleansing, but a white cleanse, sanitizing, to get rid of like a purge. And it is a global agenda. Not sure where it's going, what is happening with that. But, you were speaking, I was thinking of something. This is going to sound very bad, but I want to say it. This is not me saying, this is not even my stance. I'm just trying to think, where does this thing come in that you give back what happened so many years ago, but it is not all over. It's not. So for example, okay, we give back land because we stole land. We didn't even steal the land, but let's say we stole it because as far as I know, there was an agreement or a purchase agreement and a title deed with the Afrikaners who actually purchased the land, but nobody wants to hear that history. And, but let's say, okay, the land was stolen or the land was taken by war. For example, let's say, I know there was some taken, but let's say it was taken by war. When does if one country conquers another one, and I'm being very just brutal now, I'm not being a Christian, I'm just saying it as it is. If one country conquers another one, it's natural selection. It is the stronger one wins, and there's something called spoils of war. Somewhere something went wrong, where it is like, grade one when your kids go for, you compete in a race and you win, but you don't win because everybody gets a prize. Everybody gets
participation medals. Yeah.
get a medal and nobody's a winner. It's kind of like that's where where we're going. So
Yeah, everybody, it's called participation medals, I believe. That's what it's called.
participation medals. Yeah. So that's how
Yeah.
I see this thing. And now we have to apologize for a war we've never had, and people can argue and fight in the comments. That's fine. And history has been so twisted. We've seen it with Hitler. I'm not there to stand for Hitler, but we see it with a lot of things. History has really been changed to create ideologies and to change things going forward. So South Africa. There was something else I wanted to say. We were speaking about Nelson Mandela. We were speaking about the how the ANC killed. Nobody wants to talk about that. Somebody put in the comments, so Mbeki was removed. So think of it. I mean, Mbeki was removed. Zuma was removed. If Cyril is removed, somewhere we have to understand the incompetence. But this is an ideology. This is a deception. That's why, again, I think the only solution is for podcasts to rise up, media to rise up and push back at this thing for a few years. But I think the next few years, people have to buckle up. I think it's going to be hell in South Africa the next few years. I think financially we're going to be hit. If you got the tariffs coming in, after that you got AGOA, after that you got possibly the $400 million lawsuit. And they said with that $400 million lawsuit that we're sitting with each citizen in South Africa is sitting with $55 million debt. I don't know how they work that out, but that is a lot, Davy said something to me that made me a little bit worried, because I asked him about sanctions and what's the possibility of sanctions. And he said, look, they're going to sanction the ANC leaders, but he said we are very, very close, and there is an 80% possibility or chance for South Africa to be financially sanctioned. Now, people must understand what it means to be financially sanctioned. That means if they go to the extreme, Visa and MasterCard is gone, payment systems are gone, businesses fail, and this is what the government is doing. And this is for their own interest, to keep their own business interests. Cyril stays intentionally silent on everything, but it is going to turn back on him. But as I said, I believe he's going to be removed, but I don't know if it's the best option for the country, because what do you sit with?
I think it will. I think it will be, because as soon as he's removed, people realize that those policies aren't supported and they don't want it implemented. Now, can I just unpack a couple of things that you said?
Yeah, go ahead.
The first thing is, I think if you heard it from Davy, I think that what he meant to say was that if every cent and rand that South Africa owes other nations had to be paid back, and they call in for it to be paid back, then I think that is where it would cost every citizen 55 million.
So I didn't hear him say that. I saw an article on that somewhere, but yeah, I don't have all the facts.
I think it's got to do with our debt that we owe the rest of the world.
Yes,
like the amount of interest that, I mean, there's a website somewhere where you can type in South Africa debt by the second, and then it shows every second it's like a couple of million that it increases by. But added to that, if we just quickly go back to what you said about, what happened many centuries ago, the spoils of war. It is very problematic that people want to judge the actions of people hundreds of years ago by today's standards. You can't do that. Hundreds of years ago, there wasn't, a flu vaccine. There wasn't things that we could have used to improve life back then. 100 or 200 years ago, if somebody insulted your pride or your character, you could challenge them to a duel, and you can go and shoot them outside of a building and you wouldn't go to jail. So what I'm saying is that, yes, it's all good and well now in the comfort of your air-conditioned room with electricity and running water that you can heat up and then go take a shower whenever you want to. It's very easy to judge how people lived 100 or 200 years ago, when there might not have been electricity, where they didn't have running water or hot baths that they could take. I mean, people get agitated when their water is switched off for a week. Imagine if you just lived in a place where there wasn't access to running water. So all I'm saying is, judging people by the actions of what happened 100 or 200 years ago is not fair. And just like money is what controls the world today, what controlled the world two, three, 400 years ago was land and getting your hands on land and expanding your empire. That is
Yes.
what it was. So, and then if you just move forward a little bit, a lot of people don't, well, most people don't talk about the fact that the Afrikaner also suffered at the hands of another. And that was during the Anglo-Boer War, when, the Dutch settlers and the Afrikaners that were eventually here decided, okay, well, we're working. And then the British just came and said, no, 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 we'll take everything. Because that is what it was like. If you weren't
Mm,
happy with the, you know, uh, empire coming and saying that we want to take over things and run it our way, then you went to war.
mm,
Now, the Afrikaner or the British concentration camps that starved women and children of the Afrikaners, killed over 100,000 black individuals. You know, we never talk about these things because in today's society, it's, oh, white people always had it good, the Afrikaners and the British always had it great. No, no, it's simply not the case.
mm,
It's just that we understand that people had to do what they did, whether it was right or wrong. It doesn't change the fact that it happened. Now, we can decide as a nation to consistently look in the rearview mirror at
mm,
all the things that went wrong and then ignore what is happening in front of us, which is we're going to fall off a cliff if we don't turn our eyes around and look forward. So yeah, sorry, I'm jumping all over the show, but I just wanted to make it clear that we are headed for difficult times, but you have to see it in the same light than how we saw, how apartheid ended and how it became free and fair for everybody. But the one thing that I will continue arguing about is under the National Party during apartheid, you can say that the system was atrocious and, human rights violations occurred, and you'll be 100% correct. But there was infrastructure, the electricity worked, there was drinking water, and the unemployment rate during apartheid was far, far lower than
yeah,
what it is today.
yeah.
So the question you have to ask yourself is, what has the ANC given South Africa? What has the ANC built for South Africa? Because they're relying on Eskom's electricity grid. They haven't really built power stations. They haven't really built new dams. The only thing that they've pretty much built was a couple of hospitals and one harbor here in Nelson Mandela Bay. And now they're
Mm,
claiming that as a victory. So you have to ask, what has the ANC done over the last 30 years? And
mm.
this is the question that I always ask my audience. I say, where does the legacy of apartheid end? And where does the failure of the ANC government begin? Because it's now been 31
And it's
years.
still
And
apartheid,
at some
apartheid.
point,
Yeah.
yeah, and with the advancement of technologies, remember in the 90s, there wasn't internet. We didn't have the internet in South
Mm,
Africa. To build a house in the 80s would take you 3 months. Now it will take you 2 weeks or 3 weeks to build your house. So we have to also consider the advancement of technology and then add that to the 30 years and then ask, in apartheid years, how many years has the ANC had? Well, then it becomes 50, 60, 70 years with the technological
mm.
advancements that they could have at their disposal to fix the issues. But then if you look at the current state of South Africa, it is the worst that this nation has ever been. Ever.
Yep. I'm here in Johannesburg. Well, just outside of Johannesburg. Nobody will stay in Johannesburg, but it's looking worse than Zimbabwe. It's bad. It's really bad,
Mm,
and we are sitting with cultural problems. We are sitting with, I think we said it last time, look, I'm a full-blown Christian. I don't believe in any form of racism, but I do believe that it is healthy to be amongst the people you feel comfortable with. Now, culture has nothing to do with skin color. People need to get over that thing.
mm,
Culture has nothing to do. It's how you've been brought up. It's how you've been grown up, the family, your values, and you want to stay within those. Can you be mixed? Obviously, you can be mixed, but it is like the country is forcing us to be a certain way. But I'm going off the topic. I want to ask you, what do you think? Who do you think is behind the ANC? I mean, we got Obama behind the Democrats in the States, and they're busy arresting him right now, and you got the globalists there. But who's operating behind the ANC? Is it Johan? Is it who's pulling ropes, or isn't there anyone?
No, so look, you can break it down into what affects what, right? So the ANC, the donors of the ANC is who you need to look at. And if you look at the donors of the ANC, so people that you can see, I'm not talking about the puppet masters behind the scenes. That's more of a global approach. So like the New World Order and
George
the
Soros
UN Sustainable Goal, so that's Bill Gates, George Soros, that's, so that is taking place. I think more and more people are waking up to the idea that, I mean, you can look at COVID. Look at all the people that were very prominent during COVID, and then you'll see that was the people, the globalists that were trying to see how far they could push nations and how far they could push people. I mean, think about this. In 2021, you could not go to the beach because of a severe flu. You could be arrested, and people were arrested. Surfers were arrested for going to the beach. You couldn't wear open-toed shoes. You couldn't wear sloffies. You couldn't buy certain things. Remember, they used to add the tape over certain aisles where you couldn't buy things. You couldn't buy cigarettes. You couldn't buy alcohol. And in typical fashion, South Africans just created a massive black market. You started paying a lot more for a lot less quality.
Yes.
But so to answer your question, the ANC, I believe, if you look at the funders, so Iran, China, Russia, and pretty much trying to further the communist and socialist narrative. So those are the countries that's infiltrating it. Johan Rupert, I mean, he gives to the ANC, he gives to he pretty much gives to all political parties.
Yeah.
So I don't really think certain business individuals in South Africa is that big of a deal. I think that you've got your other countries. An example of this is China. Let's look at China. So we know that China has loaned a lot of money to South Africa. And South Africa has already defaulted on a couple of those payments. And then look what happens. Suddenly you see these massive Chinese factories ending up close to a harbor. And then you don't see local employment. You just see Chinese individuals that live on that premises.
Yes.
And they just do whatever work they need to do in that factory. And then that is pretty much it. So ultimately, we have to start asking the questions, why is China factories popping up in South Africa? Why and where does the money come from, and how have they defaulted on their payments? So I think it's you've got your globalists. I don't think South Africa is really featuring for them, but you can see it though. If you look at the UN Sustainable Goals, you can see this. That is the vision that the UN has for the world, and it's not a pretty picture. I can tell you that much.
Look, we're sitting with the world order. So obviously you got the West, and then you have those who are kind of like the BRICS nation, but you're sitting with communism. So you're sitting with China. What are they doing? They fight. It's like they're fighting over South Africa, because obviously the more nations they can get on their side, we are going to get to a world war. It is going to happen, World War III. It has to happen for the new world order to come in. So I'm not exactly, and we know a world order has to come in. It is going to come, and this is nothing biblical or anything like that. Some people biblically believe so, others not, depending on their theology on end time. But it is going to happen. Especially with the monetary system and so on that we are seeing. But looking at the guys that is behind the ANC, I think it is, like you said, nations that are trying to own countries and to develop here, because if they can take over South Africa, it's a victory. But, one thing that concerns me again is just the finances, people leaving. I think Mercedes left East London, or there's a huge turmoil there in East London, something with that. Secondly, you see the Oppenheimers that have just left or closed down their business interests. Now we know that they had their hand in some policy making and so on. But still, these are all signs. And I was asking somebody what billionaires are left in the country that is known. There is, all of them live somewhere else. London, you see, I think they said 16,000 millionaires leaving every month out of London. So where you see these policies of no capitalism taking over, and a socialism and communism, millionaires are leaving, because taxes are going through. If they do wealth taxes, they want to bring in wealth tax here right now with us. So, that's why I think
they have to plug the holes. That's the thing. So your middle class and do you not find it strange that the most effective department in the government is the South African Revenue Service?
no,
It's
of
the
course.
only functional government entity out of all the state-owned enterprises. The only one that is working at a world-class level is SARS.
SARS.
Don't you find that funny?
No, it is bad. Look at it. It is very bad. Like I said, I've been waiting now for SARS to do a payout. I don't know if it's SARS or our accountant, but I'm going to go to a tax lawyer. But to pay out for how long now? A year. To pay out a year, a lot of money. So that's supposed to pay me out for a year now, and nothing is happening. I've gone through audits, I've gone through lifestyle audits, I've gone through luxury audits. And right now my name is mixed with somebody in Parliament who's also, or not in Parliament, in Home Affairs, that's also called Leon de Preez. The COO or something from Home Affairs is called Leon de Preez. He must have done something. I can't open any accounts. So I'm trying to open offshore accounts, and the guys are treating me like a criminal. And then eventually we found out, okay, but wait, I got a PEP mark on my name. Anyway, it is just ridiculous, so I think the country's going to get worse in terms of economically. I want people to hedge their funds, hedge their things, and if the rand goes suddenly to 25 rand, and Davy was also saying to me there's a high possibility it can go. He said if the GNU breaks up, how the stability of the rand works, it can touch 25. You lose a lot of money. If you just have, people's life savings is already so little in the country. If it is 3 million, 2 million, their life savings, you lose a lot of money going to 25 rand to the dollar. So I'm not exactly sure where we're going to sit with the country. I know that we have people leaving all the time, but I'm hoping for better days. We spoke to Davy about the fact that people can have online jobs, global jobs. They don't have to leave. It's a great country to be in, this country, South Africa, with everything that's going on. We're very desensitized to it, but it's a great country to live in. Now, the reason I ask about who's running the ANC is somebody put a comment and said that Mbeki was removed because they didn't like the way he was going. He wanted to stand against the agenda. So I was trying to think who runs the agenda. Is it the ANC as a whole? Is it, I saw it in the comments, somebody mentioning it. We saw the same with Zuma. Who is running the country really? Because the things don't make sense. The DA, I look at the DA, it doesn't make sense. 1 + 1 is not 2.
So I can jump in here. So Thabo Mbeki was pretty much overthrown by Jacob Zuma's faction, and the reason for that is because China and once again Russia and Iran wanted more communism and socialism in South Africa. And Thabo Mbeki, if you go back and you look, the biggest amount of growth that South Africa experienced was under Thabo Mbeki because he implemented policies that were market friendly and friendly for capitalist investments, right? And then when Jacob Zuma came in, you could clearly see a decline almost immediately because they wanted to bring back, or they wanted to do expropriation without compensation. They pretty much wanted to implement communist and socialist policies. So Thabo Mbeki was pretty much removed by the people that funded Jacob Zuma and his faction. Now, the reason that the DA and the GNU doesn't make sense. It's very, very clear. And I heard via the grapevine, so I can't confirm it, but I mean, if you just listen to it, tell me it doesn't make sense. So broadly, the reason that the GNU has not collapsed yet is because the businesses and your billionaires that fund these political parties has made it clear to them and said that if you do not remain in the GNU, our support towards your political party and funding will not be renewed or be, we will not contribute to your political parties. Don't we won't donate. So that is why the DA is sticking with the GNU, and that is why the ANC has not yet kicked the DA out of the GNU, is because they know that there's potential hundreds of millions of rands that they will lose in party funding. Then, if you go back to a broader, from what I've heard from internally from the DA, is the reason that they dismissed me as a member of parliament and they didn't stick up and fight for me was because that was when the GNU negotiations were taking place. And they said Ronaldo is a distraction. Do what you need to do to get him out of the picture so that we can focus on the big thing, which is establishing the GNU. Because remember, there's a lot of selfish people in business as well. People that donate towards political parties, their first thing is business interests and their own interests.
Yes.
And they didn't want to see the rand going to 25 rand to the dollar, because if that happened, then a big portion of their business profits would have been wiped out. So the reason that they are trying to keep this GNU together is because of the optics. Because if you look at the GNU itself, it's not effective. It's not working. Under the GNU, we have the Bella Act, we've got the Expropriation Act, and we've got
Yes.
NHI that has been implemented.
NHI is
So
going to be a
people that want to
mess.
argue and say,
Yeah.
well, the GNU at least is better than what the alternative is, which is MK and the EFF. Well, guess what? Under the EFF and MK, you would have had the Bella Act, you would have had the Expropriation Act, and you would have had NHI.
Yes.
So it really doesn't change the optics or the dynamics of South Africa as it stands at the moment, because we've had now more than a year of the GNU, yet the GDP is getting worse, unemployment is getting worse, crime is getting worse. If you take any metric to see whether this country is better now than what it was when the ANC was still governing it, the answer is simply no, it's not. But yet, the people that fund these political parties want the GNU to remain, because that will mean that this perception is created that business is all right and, the country will be fine. It's now making a turn. It's not. It simply isn't.
People need to understand 76% of the budget, I think, is debt, is paying off debt. 76%. 13,000 Rand goes every second towards debt interest. That is where the country's in. But give me your thoughts on Gayton McKenzie. He smells, feels, looks like a betrayer. I mean, here his son jumps up, whatever, gets 50 bar, buys a stadium. He's Minister of Sports.
Sport United, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, and going to change it to something else.
The soccer team.
And move it to somewhere, move it to Free State or something. But I mean, he doesn't look like somebody that's going to have 50 bar. So it just smells weird. And I'm like, is Gayton just a hustler? Did he just get into this thing to milk it? I know the ANC owns him. I know it's probably a fraction party. You might know more, but I think it's a fraction party of the ANC for when they call or would need it. That's what I think, the PA, because he's cozying up quite a lot towards Cyril. And I think he's disappointing a lot of people.
Well, let me answer it by just giving other examples. I don't think that anybody in South Africa should ever vote for a political party that is built around the identity of one individual. Let me give you an example of this. Julius Malema, EFF. Jacob Zuma, Mkhonto weSizwe. Herman Mashaba, Action SA. Bosa, Musi Maimane, right? Tell me anything good that any of those parties have achieved. Nothing. Because the entire party is built around the personality and identity of one individual. What happens when that individual is now contested for elections and suddenly somebody is standing up against that individual. What happens to the political party because it's built around
And a
the
personality.
ideology
Yeah.
and the personality of one individual? Now, do I think that Gayton McKenzie is a bad guy? No, but do I think that his political party is successful? And if you look at where the PA governs in coalition with the ANC, are they doing better? No, no, they don't. And the reason that I believe that Gayton is so obsessed with the GNU is because every single day he gets traction. If he wasn't a minister and he was just a normal member of parliament, people wouldn't be talking about the PA. The
Mm.
reason people are talking about the PA is because Gayton is the Minister of Sports. Do you think that it is just a coincidence that Gayton became the Minister of the thing that South Africa is most obsessed with? Sport, arts and culture. That is to make sure that Gayton toes the line and that he sides with the ANC. Because look what happened when we nearly lost the GNU between the DA and the ANC because they couldn't come to an
Mm.
agreement.
Mm.
Gayton was constantly the one that was talking ill about the DA and saying, "Oh, the DA wants to do this and wants to do that, and the
Yes.
ANC is the ones that are trying hard." So, no, I mean, look, I would highly recommend that people do not vote for any political party that is built around the personality of one individual. Because if something happens to that one individual,
Mm.
then do you know if the next person is going to have the same values and principles as the person that came before? No. No, I don't think so. But I agree 100% with you that I believe the PA is just an extension of the ANC.
So you do believe he's compromised?
Yeah, I mean,
Bec-
I do think so. I mean, Gayton as an individual, I've met him a couple of times now. He's a very nice guy, very friendly, very, welcoming. But then again, that was John Steenhuisen too, and John threw me
Mm.
under the bus. So, maybe I'm not the best person to get an analysis from. But yeah, I know the big problem that we are facing at the moment in South Africa is that there is no real opposition
Yeah.
in this country.
Yeah.
And that means that the communists and the socialists can get away with whatever they want to get away with. I mean, if I told you 4 or 5 years ago, the DA would vote for a policy that is trying to get rid of Afrikaans as a
Mm.
language in schools, you would have said I was crazy. But that is
Mm.
exactly what happened.
Mm.
And if I told you that the DA would defend some aspects of the Expropriation Act and say null compensation does not mean
Means zero.
zero, you would have
Yeah.
said I'm crazy. But that is exactly what Dean McPherson said.
Yes.
And then if you look at, other policies that the DA has supported. So I think, what we need is we need to give a wake up call to all of these political parties that think that they can just rely on people's support because they've received support and votes previously. We
Mm.
need to like drastically change who we support and why we support them. I mean, I can tell you who I'm excited about, but I don't
S-
necessarily want to influence people too
Look, I
much.
know, I know. The only look, I don't vote just to say it, but the only thing that right now makes sense is FF plus.
Mm,
That's the only one that makes
I agree.
sense. But maybe not from
And
a numbers. Where are they in the numbers? How many seats do they have? Do they have actually any impact?
I think they've got 2 to 3%, but you see, that is the thing that we need to get over very quickly because the 2024 election did something that nobody thought would happen for a very long time, and that is that the ANC would fall below
Mm.
50%.
Mm.
So, and yes, we can argue that, okay, great, that if you count all the communist and socialist parties and their vote percentage, how much is that? Well, it always ends up roughly about 62 to 65%. But that's fine because, you know, if you look at the situation in South Africa at the moment, a lot of people are going to suddenly change from being communist to socialist and approach or take on a more capitalist approach. And the reason for that is because things are changing. Coalition politics is the future.
Mm.
And
You're
we can
right.
see like you can use a lot of small town like look at Tshwane, look at Nelson Mandela Bay, and even look at Johannesburg. Who were the mayors? The mayors and the people that are in the influential positions aren't the DA or the ANC. It is the smaller parties that are the kingmakers.
Yeah.
They are the ones that have the final say. So, and the problem, unfortunately, is with, let's use Action SA as an example. Action SA betrayed their voters
Big time.
because
Big
people
time.
voted for
And the guy
liberal.
just became racist. I mean, he was with all praising
Yeah, didn't
whites.
become racist. He's always been racist. That's the problem. He just hid it very well.
He did well.
But so here's the thing. Yes, the Freedom Front Plus at the moment is a relatively small party. However, the DA also was a small party in 1994. It garnered 1.8% of the vote, and now it is a 20% party. You can swing in one election. Like, I mean, if all the colored people and Afrikaners and Afrikaans, Engels, mingles, if you get those people, like an Afrikaans guy that is married to an English girl, you know, or an English guy married to an Afrikaans girl, if you take that core voter base away from the DA and you give that vote to the Freedom Front Plus, I can guarantee you, under the leadership of Corne Mulder, because that is the thing that swayed me, is Corne Mulder. Pieter Groenewald, I think, was very much just happy with the status quo. You know, as long as he could like be employed as a member of parliament and maybe two or three other people, then hey, great. You know, I think Corne Mulder wants to improve South Africa and want to fight the ANC and want to do what's right. And an example of this is that, you know, when they went to the United States, and then they came back with the four demands and said, this is what the United States expects from South Africa and what they need to do in order to open the door for discussions. And people just ignored him. And he didn't have to go and do that, but he decided to do that because he
Yeah.
wanted to get to the problem and then find out what needs to happen. So I'm very optimistic about Corne Mulder. And, you know, fundamentally, I think that he wants what is best for South Africa. So that is why I'm excited. I'm not excited for the DA because it's leaderless at the moment, and it looks like there's massive infighting in the federal executive. It looks like there's also factional battles taking place in the DA. ANC, we know there's factionalism. Mkonto is Sizwe, if they exist in 5 years, I'll be very surprised. Because that organization is literally just existing on a heartbeat of Cyril, of Jacob Zuma. If Jacob Zuma's heart stops beating,
It's
then
finished. Yeah.
you're going to see so many people vying for that top leadership position, and they are going to kill one another. They are literally going to kill one another for that. And then that party is going to be nothing. And the EFF, if they get 3% in the next election, I'll be surprised. Julius Malema, his sell-by date has come and gone. And you can even see by the way that he looks. It looks like he's got a slow puncture, in
He's
my
got
opinion.
he's got his antivirals somewhere.
Yeah, he's got his vices, and none of them is good.
The
So
shower
yeah, I
didn't
think
work for him.
no. The beetroot didn't work for him. But I think you know, anybody that is like that don't know who they should vote for, I would recommend go and look at some of Corne Mulder's speeches. Go and read up on you know, because there's also a big misconception that people have of the Freedom
Yeah.
Front Plus.
That has to
They
be
see it
changed.
and they think it's white Afrikaners and nothing else.
And they think it is like the Ovia, you know.
Yeah, which
is the
is just
perception.
absurd.
So
And
yeah,
the one thing, sorry, it's we're going back a little bit, but the one thing that I want to just, because I think it's relevant now again, is there is nothing wrong with culturally wanting to associate with either people that share your cultural beliefs or just your culture itself. That is why the EU is what it is. You know, you've got Scotland, you've got France, you've got all the different little countries there that exist. Now, what I believe should have happened in South Africa in 1994 is I believe that we should have had the country split into different little countries. And I
like
don't
federal.
think that that would have been a, yeah, I don't think it would have been a bad thing. I mean, KwaZulu-Natal could have gone to the Zulus. The Western Cape could have gone to the Afrikaners and the British. And then look, I mean, there's no limitations. If you want to travel and live in the Eastern Cape or KwaZulu-Natal, do it by all means.
Yes.
But it just simply boils down to, if I have a friend circle and the majority of my friends are straight and they are Christian and they believe in, the sanctity of marriage, am I then a racist because I didn't have maybe one or two more black friends that form part of that group? No, I wouldn't. Just like I wouldn't want to associate with men that have two women,
Mm,
two wives.
mm.
It's something that doesn't appeal to me, but it appeals to somebody else in a different culture.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that that's wrong. Well, personally, I believe it's wrong, but I'm not saying that they can't go and do what they want to do. It's just allow me to associate with whom I want to associate with, and don't label me a racist or a bigot
Yes.
or whatever. It's that simple. If you want to break it down, it's like a lot of people don't like going to the Spur. And the reason they don't want to go to the Spur is because they aren't parents and they don't want to listen to children shouting their lungs out all the time. They prefer to go to a different restaurant. Now, does that mean that these people are terrible human beings because they don't want to eat where children are screaming? No, it's just they prefer what they prefer. And that is, environment. But
Ronaldo, I
anyway,
just
sorry, I
lost you
could go on
there.
and on and on.
Okay, no, I got you back. Why did it go dead? Okay, sorry. Just lost you for 2 seconds, but I heard you.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, we can also wrap up, but I also just want to say to everybody that's watching on my channel, please be sure to go and subscribe to Leon. You can do so. The link is in the description below, and you can obviously find everything that you need below.
Yeah, guys,
I don't
same with
know, like,
me.
is there? Yeah.
We
Sorry.
have a lot of people on here, and please go and follow, subscribe to Ronaldo's channel. The link will be in the comments now. Again, it will also be in the description. Go follow his channel. I get a lot of good news always from him. I mean, there are a few channels that I watch, for news, and just for if people want to know it as yourself. It's Morning Shot. I check up on biz news now and then. What is it? I think that's about it right now. There's a few others, but those are the ones I'm watching. And guys, go and watch. And I want to say this, people are asking, and obviously I have a lot of Christians that are following us here on my channel, and people like, vote for the ACDP, vote for the ACDP. Let me just give you guys my opinion. People can vote for whatever they want and whoever they want. Why don't I vote for ACDP? Why don't I don't vote anyway until I really, really feel I should, but the thing is, I think that the ACDP is very short-sighted, and I have worked with them. I was with Kenneth Meshu for very long. He was in my house. He was a great guy. I have no problem with him. I'm not there to diss him or anything, but I believe that Christians, when they are religious, what I mean by religious is they become judgmental, they become short-sighted, they cannot see the bigger picture, and all they see is, I must vote for somebody that have Christian values. We don't have that luxury in the nation. Okay, you have to vote for the lesser evil at this point of time, but I believe FF Plus might have very Christian values because it's leaning towards Afrikaans, so I can assume that. Maybe, I don't know their values, I haven't checked it. Not saying you must vote for them, but don't go because something is Christian. I don't believe there should be a Christian government. I believe the leader in power can be a Christian, and that will change a lot of things. Like Trump. Trump is not a full-on Christian, but at least the man has some, is supporting it. So you'll always see a country being blessed. So people mustn't just say, let me just go vote for ACDP because they are Christian. I think they are short-sighted. That is my opinion. That is not an accusation, or because that party can get quite upset with me. So let me just
Can I back you up there?
go ahead. Yeah.
So can I just ask anybody that is saying they should vote for the ACDP, can I ask you, give me one policy direction that is not religious based that that they will implement? And you won't be able to answer me. So I understand that you want to vote for the ACDP because they proclaim to be a Christian party, and I'm not saying they're not. There were two ACDP councillors when I was in council in Nelson Mandela Bay,
Mm.
lovely people, but you know, didn't really know that much, to be fair, about politics. And politics is a dirty game. So there's so many what is the term? So many when you have preconceived notions about people. The
Assumptions or
first one is, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's such a common term, but now I forgot it. Stereotypes.
Yeah.
So the one is that a Domini, you must watch out for Dominis because they're the ones that drive the BMWs. I remember the old theory, like if you always looked at a Domini, they would drive a Mercedes Benz or a BMW. And then the other thing is you never trust a politician. So now you've got the two worst parts that you want to compare, but I'm just joking. The real thing here at the end of the day is that we live in a very multicultural society, and I believe that people should have the right to espouse their religious
Mm.
beliefs. That is what a lot of people fought and died for in South Africa. And it's all good and well. I think in a perfect world, you would want to be governed by people that 100% share your ideology and your
Values.
religious
Yeah.
beliefs. But unfortunately, we have to choose at the moment. Do we want a functioning South Africa and then hopefully one day have a country that is governed on Christian principles? That is something that I think that we can all strive towards. But at the moment, I think what we need first and foremost is just a functioning South Africa
Yeah.
that isn't collapsing in on itself. And the only way that you can get to that is if you eventually vote the right people in, and people that is palatable to more than just Christians
Yes.
in South Africa. So, and I mean, once again, to be fair to the Freedom Front Plus, I mean, they believe in Christianity. They are
Mm.
Christians. They are deeply rooted in Christian beliefs. So I'm not trying to sway people. I'm just saying that, it's all good and well if you're a political party and your whole identity is Christianity. But then what do you implement as a political party? Because, I know the Bible speaks a lot about a bunch of things, on how we should live our life. But, does it talk about the fine lines between municipalities, provincial government and national government? Doesn't necessarily talk about that. So I would rather trust a political party that is focused on being a political party first and
Exactly.
foremost, and then secondly, espousing their religious beliefs and letting that guide their policies. And that
Yeah.
is what the Freedom Front Plus does.
Absolutely. Let me say this. Like you said something that we first need to get the country functional, and whether it takes a Satanist, whether it takes or not a Muslim, but we're not looking at beliefs right now because we need to get the country functional. We can look at the caveats much later on once the country is functional. Let me just clarify with the ACDP. I know them very well. They are great people. I know Kenneth Mish and his family. I know them personally. We have extensively, at a time, which was a mistake, tried to help them. I mean, try to, because I said to them, I said, guys, I don't see your presence anywhere. Like, it's elections, you are nowhere. So it just didn't make sense to me. So we built a certain system that helped them. I mean, we actually helped their IT infrastructure because they weren't able to do it. So we did it as a gift. But I then personally, as I spoke, I saw their how short-sighted they would go to a small church there to try to get votes, but there's a church that have, let's say, 150,000 people, but just because they don't like the personality, they wouldn't want to go there. Now, I'm not saying go to churches to get votes, but they can because they're a Christian party. So it was very short-sighted and it didn't make sense to me. Don't be a pastor, try to be a politician. And I don't think we want to vote in pastors or dominis or whatever you call a minister. Like people want to, even the Christians in America want to try to make Trump a bishop, or, why is he not acting Christian? He's not there to act Christian, he's there to be the president. And if people can have that balance, that is why I don't vote for him. Christians can. But I want to say this, I think with the election, I think this, after 1994, the next election is going to probably be the most important one. And, people have to vote very carefully for that one. And I want to close off from my side, but I mean, we can still add if you want, Ronaldo. But I want to say this, that I think economically it's going to get tough. People need to, the church is very important in this time. It is crucial. I know a lot of Christians want to say, I don't need the church and all that stuff, and I understand why they say it. It's a little bit of a ignorant statement, because they don't understand how it works. If I have a family, it is good for me to be part of a family, to be in fellowship. And for some reason, a lot of Christians say, we are the church, we don't need a church building. It's totally against Bible. There's something that is very important. I know we have a lot of viewers that are watching, a lot of people, especially if they have a Afrikaans background or so, they get born into a Christian home. That doesn't necessarily make them a Christian or so, but there's something when you are amongst godly fellowship. If you are a believer, if you're not a believer, I would encourage you to look into it. But if you are a believer, there's something to be amongst godly fellowship, spirit-filled fellowship. The Bible makes it very clear. It says that there is a light, and the blood cleanses us when we are in fellowship. So when I'm amongst Christian friends and in a community of fellowship, it works with my conscience. And the times that we are going to go into, even look at COVID. COVID, our numbers, sure, we went viral all over. Our income doubled because people were scared, people were full of fear, and they were heading towards the church, they were watching us online. And I think we're going to go into a time where people genuinely need the church. And the church is not there to steal money. Obviously, the same way politicians steal money, the church does. The same way you have immoral doctors, illegal doctors, you're going to have good doctors as well. We can't make a general assessment and paint everybody with the same brush. It doesn't work like that. But there are genuine churches, and there's no perfect church. So when people say this and that, that's just a lame excuse. It does something to your soul. It does something to your spirit when you are amongst the right people who have your beliefs. And I think that is going to be needed. That's what our goal is. We'll be getting this church up. Once we are up, we're going to be planting churches all over, the nation. And that is our part that we are playing. So I just wanted to leave that. I think that is important for people to get to, because the economy, once this thing is going to take a dip, you're going to see a lot of things happening. You're going to see middle class getting, well, we don't have a middle class, but the middle class getting less. Our middle class is a joke. Our middle class is America's low class. I got friends, guys that flew in from the United States. They're sitting here next to us. They flew in from Washington State to come, to the church where people come for importation. They encounter God here. So they flew in, and we're speaking about minimum wage, and people get shocked when they understand the minimum wage in South Africa. That minimum wage per hour is $1. I think it's $1, eh? $1.50 is minimum wage.
18 rand.
It's $1 is minimum wage, and it's ridiculous, And the thing is, we are just being so desensitized. But once the economy, people are going to take a huge knock. And I want to leave one verse with people. The Bible says this. It says, "You will prosper as your soul prospers." A lot of people run after money, but their soul is not prospering. And once your soul prospers, you will prosper. But a lot of people want to turn the thing around. They don't want to look after their soul. They want money as a survival point. Money can do nothing for you. I've sat with millionaires. I've sat with billionaires. I have sat with people that has a lot of money, and money can destroy you. It can come with a curse, when your soul is not healthy. And I think the times we are going to go into is going to push people to get their souls healthy. So there's a little bit of a silver lining for me in this thing,
And then, just to conclude from my side, look, I think things are going to get rough, but the thing is, when you have, unfortunately, people that are living below the breadline, if you look at the July riots, you will see that is a reaction because people are angry and upset. And unfortunately, I think that the people that will eventually stand up against the ANC first and against the GNU will be the poorest of the poor. And it will be the people that just simply can't anymore. People that can't feed themselves, that can't get jobs. Because we know, the middle class is pretty much useless when it comes to protesting against the government. So it is always the poorest of the poor that needs to go and fight for the entire South Africa. And I think that is what's going to happen. Now, do I think that we're going to break into a civil war and, we're going to become, the army is going to take over? Well, you don't have to worry about that because the army doesn't really exist in South Africa. Secondly, the SAPS is not going to control South Africa because there's only 170,000 police officers. So the only people that's going to save South Africa is South Africans. And we need to save ourselves from the ANC. We need to save ourselves from communism and socialism. And that will happen because things are terrible in South Africa as it stands right now. And the only way that it can improve is by people saying enough is enough. And I think and I feel that that is closer than what we've ever been. And I think it's not going to be along racial lines. It's going to be along, we are gutful of living in these conditions. And we suffered under apartheid, and now we are suffering under the ANC government. So, what is the common denominator here? Well, the common denominator is socialism and communism.
Yeah.
And then just to also give maybe a verse for people out there. Psalms 27 in Afrikaans. Die Here is my lig en my redder, vir wie sou ek bang wees? Die Here is my toevlug, vir wie sou ek vrees? And that is what I believe we need to carry with us, Times are tough, but we need to look up at God and we need to trust God. And we also need to make sure that we are the tools that God uses. And I think that is why Leon is here and does what he does. And that's why I'm here and I do what I do. As a Christian, that is what I believe. Anyway, that's all I've got to say from my side.
Thanks so much, man. Yeah, the time flew. It's already 9 o'clock almost.
Crazy. It's lekker when you have lekker conversations, though. But I'll end it on my side, but we'll chat quickly afterwards. But everybody, thank you for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel. And also, please be sure to subscribe to Leon's channel. Link in the description below from my side. And I'm assuming it's the same on Leon's side if you're watching it from Leon's side. But thank you for tuning in. Please be sure to comment and please be sure to share this video far and wide so that more people can enjoy it. And that's pretty much it. We'll catch you again soon for another episode with the Unfiltered Chat with myself and Leon du Preez. Have a good one, everybody. Till later.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers and peace out.